the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited annual public meeting. We're coming to you live from Chalk River Laboratories in beautiful Chalk River, Ontario. And it's great to have you with us all. We've had a couple of little technical difficulties because we're doing things in a new location. We're at the Science Collaboration Center in the auditorium here at the labs. So forgive us if we have a couple of technical difficulties. I think we had to send an updated link earlier, but I'm sure everybody's figured it out and gotten online. It's great to have you with us. So thank you, and thank you for being patient with us. We look forward to this every year as an opportunity to let you know what we've been up to and the status of some important files. So thank you again for taking a bit of time to spend your afternoon with us. My name is Jeremy Latta, and I'm the Director of Communications and Government Reporting here at AECL, and I'll be our moderator. We also have simultaneous translation available. There's a little closed captioning button in Teams. You can click on that, and then we've got a transcription available in French, and we'll also have this available in French when we post it on YouTube. As well, if you'd like to add any questions, there's a questions field in the Teams client that you're using. You can just type your questions in there and we'll see them. Before I go any further, I'd really like to acknowledge that we here at the Chalk River site are located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be here today. The Algonquin people are the traditional guardians of this land, and we acknowledge and respect their longstanding relationship with this territory. And AECL sites across the country are located on the traditional and treaty territories of numerous Indigenous nations. Wherever you're joining us from, I'd encourage you to take a moment to think about the history and the culture of the land that you're standing on, and how you can cultivate greater respect for and inclusion of those who've cared for these lands since time immemorial. Thank you. So, our agenda today, pretty straightforward. We're going to hear from Jim Burpee, the chair of the AECL board, with his perspective on the past year, and then CEO Fred DeMarker and some other members of the team here are going to take us through some issues in more detail. That's going to take us about an hour, at the end of which we'll have time for your questions. As I said, you can submit those questions right into the online platform at any time, and we'll do our best to address them. If we run out of time, or if your question requires a more detailed answer, we'll respond to it in meeting right after this meeting. We'll respond to it in writing, not respond to it in meeting. Jeez Louise. All right, we'll respond to it in writing. That's what we're going to do today. And without any further ado, I'll ask our board chair, Jim Burpee, to come up to the podium, and I'll raise the microphone for him. There you go, Jim.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good afternoon. To everyone joining us virtually to learn more about what AECL has achieved in the past year. Past year has been one of, I like the words here, immense change for Canada. Since our last public meeting, we have a new government, and the international political landscape for all of us has changed significantly, and I can't underscore that change. We've all lived it, and we're all still living it. But the government, some of the key things for us is the government has established Major Projects Office to fast-track national building projects. And we've seen major announcements on nuclear energy investment, internationally and at home, including recently an investment of $2 billion by the federal government and $1 billion by the province of Ontario in the Darlington new nuclear project. In addition to the 4 small modular reactors at Darlington, large nuclear is also on the table in Ontario. And other provinces are seriously looking at nuclear energy as well. So Canada is getting serious about new energy and nuclear energy. So how does AECL fit into the picture? A lot has changed. A lot has stayed the same. The AECL mission is driving nuclear innovation to deliver clean energy technologies and improve the quality of life of Canadians while caring for the land. Drive innovation, improve the quality of life for Canadians, and care for the land. The way we see it, that overall mission remains entirely relevant and consistent with the government priorities for building Canada, strengthening our national security, and making Canada an energy superpower. AECL is working hard every day to build Canada on major projects like the cleanup of Port Hope, decommissioning of legacy research facilities, and investment in the revitalization the Chalk River Laboratories campus, where we are today. And developing new clean energy technologies is a major contribution to our energy future and Canada's national security. Because energy security and energy sovereignty are a huge part of our national security. So from the work we're doing today to safely operate and extend the operating lives of existing nuclear fleet, to research supporting the next generation of reactors, including small modular reactors, to finding unique applications for Canadian-owned micromodular reactor designs, to long-term work on nuclear fusion, the clean energy source of the future. AECL is driving the cutting-edge nuclear science that will ensure prosperity and security for generations to come. And to help deliver a financially sustainable future, the government has asked all federal organizations to examine their operations and find ways to reduce expenditures. Today, we'll hear about AECL's Indigenous relations, particularly in the context of the near-surface disposal facility. Some news from AECL's Science and Technology program covering a range of exciting areas. Highlights from our environmental cleanup mission, and more. And of course, another major issue this year has been the renewal of the multi-year contract to operate Canadian nuclear laboratories. We'll get into that during today's discussion, but I will say this is a file that has certainly had the attention and focus of the board this year. And while we did experience and have experienced a delay, we are moving in the right direction. It has been a very big year for Canada and a big year for AECL. Next up, I'll invite AECL President and CEO Fred DeMarco to say a few words. Fred has several members of his team here this afternoon to give us a little more in-depth detail in terms of looking at a few select files. But we'll start with his perspective as CEO on some key issues. Thank you for tuning in today and for your interest in nuclear science and the environment. I now turn the podium back to Jeremy to properly introduce Fred.
Thank you, Jim. This is a very important transition. Thank you, Jim. Over to you, Fred.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jeremy. I don't know how we could have transitioned without you, but I appreciate that. As Jim also expressed, thank you all for joining us today. C'est toujours un privilège de pouvoir échanger et célébrer nos réalisations et discuter ouvertement des défis et des opportunités de notre organisation. We have a full agenda this afternoon, so let's dive right in. As I'm sure you're aware, Budget 2025 was passed early last week, setting out the government's plan to spend less on operations and invest more in priorities that strengthen Canada. Part of this plan included a comprehensive expenditure review exercise that took place over the past several months, aimed at achieving $13 billion in annual savings by 28-29 across more than 100 federal organizations. With the passing of the budget, these expenditure reductions will be underway in the coming year. For AECL, the impact is modest. Our planned reductions are $1.6 million in 26-27, $2.1 million in 27-28, and $3.2 million ongoing from 28-29. To put this in perspective, AECL's annual budget ranges between $1.2 and $1.9 billion, so these reductions represent a very small portion of our funding. The government has exempted most of our core missions, decommissioning, capital projects, and science, from these reductions. This means our focus will be on finding efficiencies in AECL's own operational activities without affecting Canadian Nuclear Lab's core work. Notre engagement reste le même. Nous continuerons à remplir le mandat de AECL qui consiste à faire progresser la science nucléaire, à soutenir l'innovation et à garantir une décontamination sûre. These changes will not compromise our strategic objectives or the important work we do for Canadians. It's now my pleasure to talk about the Federal Nuclear Science and Technology Work Plan. We recognize that the Chalk River Labs are a unique Canadian asset and home to some amazing people, equipment, and capabilities. We also recognize that nuclear needs to be part of the clean energy mix, providing it safe, secure, and environmentally sound. Those are the four theme areas of this program: energy, safety and security, health, and the environment. And it's through these four theme areas that the program is responding to the needs and priorities of 15 government departments and agencies. The participation of the departments and agencies is broad, which means that our research is diverse. Let's move to the heart of what we do: nuclear science and technology. The Federal Nuclear Science and Technology Work Plan is one of the keys to our innovation mission. This is a program that funds research in the areas of health, energy, safety, and security, and the environment. And the most important element of this program is that 15 different federal organizations are a part of how we identify and select research projects. This means that our work is tied directly to public interest needs across the federal government, ensuring that our nuclear labs are serving a diverse range of needs. And that's everything from supporting the Canadian Space Agency in exploring space to supporting the Canadian Border Services Agency in securing our borders. AECL is committed to academic collaboration through the FNST work plan. In July, AECL and CNL renewed memoranda of understanding with all 9 of our academic partners for another 5 years. This will allow us to, 1, develop highly qualified talent and create an engaged talent pipeline for CNL to satisfy future needs. 2, leverage collaborative research opportunities to advance SNT and corporate objectives. And 3, facilitate access to unique infrastructure, facilities, and expertise. Our academic partnerships also enable Canada to host international initiatives, such as the International Atomic Energy Agency's Lise Meitner program for professional women in nuclear around the world. Building on the knowledge and capabilities of the Chalk River Labs, AECL and CNL have signed a Memorandum of Understanding with University Network of Excellence in Nuclear Engineering, or UNINI as it's often called, to pursue the development of the Canadian Nuclear Learning Centre. The vision of the centre is to coordinate education, training, knowledge management, and workforce development across Canada's growing nuclear sector. The Nuclear Learning Centre will build on the training and exercise materials developed under the FNST work plan and make them accessible to academia and industry. It will also be a platform to addressing nuclear workforce development while maximizing the use of our facilities through experiential learning. All of this really underscores another important role of the National Nuclear Labs to help develop the next generation of nuclear experts. We see it as part of our responsibility to make our facilities and expertise available to help grow new science and technology leaders, even if they don't end up working for us. Growing the Canadian nuclear sector will have benefits for all of us and for all Canadians. And I'm personally very, very excited by this program and these developments. Another major achievement under the FNST work plan, we asked CNL to put together the Fusion Energy for Canada report, a new plan that outlines a collective vision and proposes elements of a national strategy to make fusion energy a reality in Canada. We recognize that in the future, fusion energy has the potential to make a significant contribution to meeting the growing demand for energy. A key recommendation from this report included establishing a Center for Fusion Energy. We're hoping to have news on this in the very, very near future. So stay tuned. And more on fusion. This year, Canada played an important role in the G7 Working Group on Fusion Energy in September 2025, which was launched under the Italian G7 presidency. The working group provided a platform for exchanging progress updates and strengthening cooperation. This took place on the margins of the sold-out Tritium Science and Technology Conference sponsored by CNL and AECL and hosted in Ottawa. We're also leveraging our unique capabilities in tritium science to build out our competitive advantage in one particular aspect of fusion through the formation of Fusion Fuel Cycles Incorporated, or FFC, a groundbreaking joint venture between Kyoto Fusioneering of Japan and CNL. With all of this activity and together with CNL's investment in General Fusion, another Canadian fusion company, AECL and CNL are playing a leading role in bringing together the domestic fusion ecosystem. And I'm optimistic that we will have even more exciting news in the fusion space to discuss next year. At AECL, we have a responsibility to maximize the value of Canadian nuclear innovation. And that includes making sure that intellectual property managed within our portfolio is exploited to best meet the needs of Canadians. In response to renewed interest of small nuclear reactors in contributing to Canadian energy security, particularly in remote regions, CNL engaged the market through a process known as a Request for Expression of Interest, or RFEOI. This process sought initial interest from industry in the potential commercialization of two of AECL's small reactor technologies, including both the AECL nuclear battery and the Slowpoke family of reactors. Having generated significant interest, the positive response we received from a range of potential partners clearly highlights the potential for this technology, and we are currently considering next steps for how we can best utilize this intellectual property to deliver maximum value to Canadians. This is all on top of the can-do intellectual property, which we are managing, and we're very excited to work with our partners in the Canadian nuclear industry to advance this technology as a potential large-scale nuclear technology, new nuclear technology application for Canada going forward. Let's pivot to our Indigenous engagement efforts, which runs through everything we do. For AECL, Indigenous engagement and furthering reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is based on four key commitments: listening and taking meaningful action, learning about Indigenous history and culture, sharing and integrating Indigenous knowledge into policies and projects, and empowering nations through partnership and economic opportunity. And for us, reconciliation means, in practical terms, taking meaningful steps that respect Indigenous values and laws, align with nations' interests and priorities, and benefit members and citizens. All of the work we do depends on strong relationships with Indigenous nations. Working closely with our contractor, Canadian Nuclear Labs, we are developing and implementing memoranda of understanding and agreements to build lasting relationships. While unique to each nation, they share similar objectives. That is, engaging early, building capacity, co-developing plans, enabling community involvement, and supporting economic and cultural development. For example, AECL and CNL continue to support Indigenous-led environmental monitoring, including the Algonquin-Waknagon First Nation Nayagada Wabandangaki program here in Ontario, and the Saugeen Anishinaabe Nation Nigan Ake program in Manitoba. Over the course of a year, Indigenous nations participated in more than 30 visits to observe and conduct environmental monitoring at AECL sites. CNL recently signed an agreement with Tabati de Nesutene Nation, located on the border between Alberta and the Northwest Territories. This agreement is intended to support community-led protocols to protect cultural heritage and sacred grounds as part of the CNL's environmental remediation work along the Northern Transportation Route. AECL is working with CNL to enhance training and economic development through CNL's new Indigenous procurement strategy, which is using community-based direct awards, Indigenous-only competitions, and supply chain partnership and mentorship to increase opportunities for Indigenous-owned business. Finally, AECL and CNL are engaging in site restoration and future use planning, including the potential for SMR development and revenue and equity sharing initiatives. Together, CNL and AECL have more than 30 agreements with Indigenous nations and communities that support collaboration, address shared priorities, and advance mutual goals like environmental protection and economic development. Our long-term relationship agreement with the Algonquin of Pikwakanagan First Nation is a testament to this approach and the first to include generational commitments. These include committees and working groups to enable early engagement and involvement in site planning and waste management. AECL is grateful for the time and effort this requires of chief and council, of guardians, of elders, and of consultation staff. We're equally committed to being respectful, steadfast partners. Our agreement with the Algonquin of Pikwakanagan gives us a chance to engage and consult differently and to earn the nation's trust. We understand this takes time. It takes ongoing commitment, and most importantly, it takes concrete action. Under the first phase of the agreement, Pikwakanagan established the Nayagada Wabandangaki Guardian Program, which I mentioned earlier. Now, with dedicated support from AECL and CNL and other organizations, 6 guardians are monitoring resource use, collecting data, and reporting findings to their consultation department. They are the eyes and ears of their nation, undertaking important work to assert rights and title, and to monitor and protect lands and cultural resources within their traditional territory. This territory includes the Chalk River Labs and the nuclear power demonstration sites. Building a relationship is not easy. We are continuously learning from each other, and we don't always agree. But we have been developing and implementing processes and protocols that help us to navigate challenges together, including around the storage and disposal of nuclear waste. And that, I hope, can help us explore other innovative and equity-based partnerships moving forward. I also know AECL and CNL have more work to do, not only with the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan, but with other nations we engage and consult with regularly. Kibawek First Nation, situated in Quebec and about 150 kilometers upstream of Chalk River, is involved in 2 judicial reviews related to the near-surface disposal facility at the Chalk River site. The near-surface disposal facility is the proposed disposal site for low-level radioactive waste, and it's a critical project to allow for the remediation of the site and environmental protection of the Chalk River site. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission approved construction of the project in January of 2024, but we have paused construction as legal challenges go through the courts. In early 2025, the federal court directed CNL and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to resume consultation with Quebec to develop a consent process for the project by September 2026. CNL welcomes participation in a consent process and is working diligently with Quebec to develop this process. However, it is appealing other elements of the decision to seek clarity and direction on the application of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the requirements for consultation and engagement. The court has not yet rendered a decision. AECL is also working closely with CNL to support the development of Quebec's process, not only in relation to the near-surface disposal facility, but for other projects and activities proposed in Algonquin territory. Aligned with our 10-year framework agreement signed in 2023, AECL and CNL are committed to ongoing, meaningful engagement with the Quebec Chief and Council, community members, and consultation staff. My team and I are personally committed to finding a respectful path forward to help mitigate and resolve concerns about projects and activities taking place at AECL sites in Algonquin territory. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jeremy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Fred. Next, a new entrant to the public meeting. We've got Stephanie LeMay, our Director and Contracting Officer for GOCO, that's Government-Owned Contractor Operated Procurement, to talk about something that Jim mentioned at the start, and that is the contract transition. Stephanie, take it away.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie LeMay, and I'm the Director and Contracting Officer for the GOCO Procurement here at AECL. Since 2015, AECL has been carrying out its mandate through a contractor-operated government agency model, whereby a private company, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, we call it CNL, is responsible for managing and operating AECL sites. In this model, AECL, the owner, and CNL, the operator, are enduring entities, while the contractor, currently the Canadian Nuclear Energy Alliance, CNEA, is renewed or replaced through a competitive procurement process. Under this model, AECL owns the sites, facilities, assets, intellectual property, and responsibility for environmental restoration and radioactive waste management. CNL is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the sites, is the employer of the workforce, and is responsible for all operating permits and licenses. The model allows AECL to leverage private sector expertise to achieve the best possible outcomes for the decommissioning and waste management program and the continued transformation of Chalk River Laboratories into a world-class nuclear facility, while reducing costs and risks to Canadians. CNL has been managed since September of 2015 by CNEA, a consortium made up of 3 partner companies, Atkins Realis, Jacobs Engineering, and Fluor Federal Services, under a contract that was set to expire this past September. As many of you likely know, AECL has spent the last couple of years designing and running a competitive process to continue the management and operation of CNL beyond this time. This past June, we announced that a new contractor had been selected, Nuclear Laboratory Partners of Canada, NLPC. NLPC is a partnership with 3 primary joint venture partners, BWXT Government Group, Amentum Environment and Energy, and Kinetrix, with Battelle Memorial Institute as the key subcontractor. At the time of that announcement, NLPC was announced as the preferred bidder, with the contract to be formally awarded in September of this year. Over the summer, the NLPC team began a phased transition period, which allowed the new leadership team to really dig in, meet their new teams, tour our sites, transfer knowledge from the outgoing leadership group, and get to know the details before formal share transfer in September. But again, as many of you are aware, that share transfer hasn't actually happened yet. Due to the unique nature of AECL's GOCO model, the award of the contract involves the transfer of the shares from CNEA to NLPC. As it results, this transaction is known as a notifiable transaction. That requires mandatory pre-closing notification under the Competition Act. And as a part of the activities required for closing this transaction, the Competition Bureau of Canada is conducting a merger review. The Competition Bureau is an independent government agency that seeks to protect and promote competition for the benefit of Canadian consumers and businesses. The Competition Bureau reviews all notifiable mergers to determine whether they are likely to result in a substantial lessening or prevention of competition in any market in Canada. So over the summer and through the fall, AECL, CNL, and LPC have been diligently working to facilitate the review, including providing documentation and other information about the various activities of the organizations. In a business as large and diverse and complex as ours, there is a lot to understand and a lot of documentation to collect and to review. So it has taken some time. Because this review process is not complete, the contract transition has been delayed from the original planned date of September 13th. AECL has put in place an extension to the current GOCO contract with CNEA to provide continuity of operations and leadership at CNL. At this time, AECL does not have an exact date as to when the contract transition will occur. In the meantime, teams at NLPC, AECL, CNEA, and CNL will continue to plan and prepare for a smooth transition. Importantly, the focus continues to be on the continuity of safe and secure operations. This is a collective priority for all parties. This change in the transition date does not affect outgoing work, projects, and priorities of CNL, as CNL missions and mandates are not changing and continues to be the and CNL continues to be responsible for operating AECL's sites and assets. We are keenly aware that this delay is not ideal, particularly the disruption and uncertainty it can cause to CNL employees. However, that's the process defined by the Competition Act, and these types of reviews play a valuable role, which we understand. We remain hopeful that we'll be able to close the contract and move forward in the near future, but we are not in a position to provide a specific date at this time. Finally, just last week, the Competition Bureau announced that they are continuing their review of BWXT Technologies' acquisition of Kinetrix. Both these companies are a part of the NLPC team. It's important to note that this review process by the Competition Bureau concerns a separate transaction than the NLPC's acquisition of CNL shares. We are looking forward to when the contract executes and advancing our goals of strengthening CNL's role as Canada's national nuclear laboratories. We are looking forward to pursuing collaborations and partnerships, continuing our vital decommissioning and waste management projects, and continuing to revitalize the Chalk River campus. It's taking longer than we planned, but we remain excited about this next chapter for AECL and CNL.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. So we've talked about, Fred talked about the Indigenous relations mission and values that run through everything that we do. Fred also talked about our science and technology mission and many of the achievements that have happened there. Stephanie talked about the contract transition, which has been a huge file for us this year. And lastly, we're going to bring it home with Alistair McDonald, our Vice President of Decommissioning and Waste Management, who's going to talk about decommissioning and waste management, as well as revitalization of the Chalk River campus. And Alistair, since you have so much to say, I got you a glass of water because you might need it. Good luck.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone else, and thanks everyone for joining and listening in this afternoon. Yeah, as Jeremy introduced me there, I look after oversight of all our decommissioning work across all of our sites and the new construction work at Chalk River. So I'm just going to take you a run through some of that this afternoon. And I would like to start by acknowledging a major milestone that's been achieved this year in Canada's nuclear decommissioning programme. It's the successful consolidation of the G1 fuel from Gentilly. This project was carried out by CNL on behalf of AECL as part of our commitment to environmental stewardship and responsible management of our nuclear legacy. This initiative saw the safe transfer of all the used nuclear fuel from the Gentilly site in Quebec to Chalk River Laboratories. This work enables the reduction of overhead costs and clears the way for full decommissioning of the Gentilly 1 site. But more broadly, this project reflects AECL's objective to reduce the number of sites where it holds used fuel by centralising safe, secure storage. It demonstrates AECL's and CNL's leadership in nuclear material management and environmental remediation, which is critical for Canada's clean energy future. I do want to express my gratitude to everyone who contributed to this achievement. Completing the preparation, packaging, transportation of used fuel was no small feat. It required rigorous safety, security and emergency preparedness measures. Throughout the process, we worked closely with Indigenous nations, communities and stakeholders to ensure transparency and build trust. And together we've set a solid foundation for the next phase of decommissioning. So what comes next? CNL has applied to the regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, to amend the Gentilly 1 licence for full decommissioning. We expect a public hearing to take place during 2026, and that provides an important opportunity for continued engagement and oversight as we prepare to dismantle the remaining structures and advance our environmental remediation. The achievement is testament to the expertise and dedication of our teams and partners. It underscores our commitment to safety, sustainability and innovation as we manage Canada's nuclear legacy responsibility. I also would like to acknowledge the work done by the off-site reactor teams at the Douglas Point reactor out in the Bruce Peninsula. This has included the demolition, sorting and segregation of all the waste associated with the non-active buildings in Douglas Point. During this last field season, the turbine building was safely demolished, and over 95% of the waste from this demolition has been recycled, with minimum amounts of industrial contaminated waste going to landfill. So from my mind, that's some really good news. In addition, the spent resin tanks were also safely removed from their subsurface vaults, dismantled and removed from site. And thanks, Jeremy, for the water. I'll now talk about some of the work which is taking place at the Whiteshell Laboratories site in Manitoba. At Whiteshell, over the last year, there has been a lot of effort put into preparing the site for the arrival of the standpipes and bunkers waste retrieval system. This is a series of machines that will provide a key capability to ensure the cleanup of the waste management area at Whiteshell. There's a total of 171 standpipes and 7 bunkers containing waste that need to be dealt with, amongst other waste stored out at Whiteshell in that area. CNL have made good progress with the work on these machines, and they are planned to be shipped to the site later in 2026. At the site itself, there have been several activities that have been completed to enable the arrival of these machines. Some of the access roads have been updated to ease the access into the waste management area. Concrete pads have been installed to support the movement of these machines. They are not small machines, as you can see from some of the photographs there. The electrical power distribution in that area has been updated, and an existing store on site has been modified to create a cask loading facility to help with the operations of this facility. In addition to that, there's been some new office and worker space installed near the site. As well as that sort of work, there has been extensive characterization of several trenches that are located out in that waste management area, and that will enable more planning to help with understanding restoration options for the low-level waste that's currently emplaced in these trenches. In the main site area at Whiteshell, there's been continued infrastructure updates to better support decommissioning of individual buildings into the future, as well as additional trailer space created to enable staff to be close to the project work. Moving on to the future of the Whiteshell site, while we clean up the land, we're also thinking about what comes next and what the future of this site looks like. Our role is to prepare the site for future use, but who decides what the future looks like? This question is one for the entire community, and discussions are underway now with community leaders and Indigenous partners to explore opportunities. We know that the land out in Whiteshell has potential for economic development, for clean industry innovation, for education, and so much more. No decisions have made yet, and we want to make sure that all voices are heard before narrowing down what the end state of the site will look like. We're also committed to more than just restoring the land. Our work at Whiteshell is about building trust, deepening relationships, and making long-term investments in community well-being. Public engagement is year-round and ongoing, including presence at local schools and classrooms, Indigenous gatherings and community events. The recent regional gathering of leaders is a key example of inclusive multi-party engagement. I was out in Beausejour myself for that event, and it was an inspiration to see and hear the energy in the room as people were talking about the future for Whiteshell and the area. I'd also like to talk today about the Whiteshell Fire Response Team. The fire team has been a priority for us over the past 2 years, and I'm really proud to say that Whiteshell now boasts a highly capable team of 48 uniformed personnel, and that gives us over 600 years of combined fire response experience. Level 2 firefighters, firefighter technicians, water rescue technicians, certified fire service instructors as well. This is a really strong mix of technical expertise and real-world operational experience. These staff also serve on 18 different local fire departments, so that strengthens the entire region. Unfortunately, this year, Manitoba experienced devastating wildfires that claimed lives and destroyed invaluable property and natural habitat across the province. This crisis was very difficult for everyone in the province, including AECL and CNL staff who lost properties, took in neighbours in need, and lived with the fear and stress of not knowing where the fires might go next. Our site at Whiteshell remained safe throughout the crisis, and CNL personnel helped provincial authorities respond to wildfires. In addition, the Whiteshell Fire Team was honoured to support the City of Thompson this year. By deploying some of Whiteshell's firefighters on a temporary basis, CNL was able to help that community and also build experience within the CNL team. It's just another example of how AECL and CNL are very serious about supporting the communities in which we operate. So with that, I'd like to talk about some of the work taking place in Port Hope. The Port Hope Area Initiative is a community-requested remediation of impacted lands in the municipalities of Port Hope and Clarington along the shores of Lake Ontario. The picture shown here is the Port Granby remediation when it was in progress in 2020. Material was removed from shallow burials in the foreground of the photo and trucked to a purpose-built engineered long-term waste management facility. This project was completed and the long-term waste management facility was capped in 2022. As you can see from the photograph taken in 2024, a much newer one, the site has been restored with over 20,000 tree plantings, and that site is now in long-term care and maintenance. It's a real success story for us and the community. The waste at Port Granby site and in the town of Port Hope originated from the processing of uranium ore that was transported from the Northern Territories. The initial processing aim was the extraction of radium and then uranium, and these products have been used for many industrial uses over the time and eventually for power generation purposes. But the byproduct of these processes leave with mill tailings, and it's these mill tailings that contain very low levels of radioactive waste. They appear also like a soil-like product. So from the 1920s up into the 1970s, this waste soil was dispersed extensively across the town as a fill material for foundations, landscaping, or land reclamation. Ravines were filled and the material was used as daily backfill at the then operational Highland Drive landfill in the middle of Port Hope. When these disposal location sites were no longer available, the ravine at Port Granby became the new destination for the waste. So this is not modern good practice, and in 2001 this community requested remediation was agreed to between the Government of Canada and the municipalities of Clarendon and Port Hope, and that is the work that AECL continue to honour to this day. The initial scope of the remediation included the burials at Port Granby and 18 major sites and approximately 375 private properties in the town of Port Hope itself. The remediation of all the 18 sites will be complete by December 2025, and the photo here shows the remediated sites where restoration has been completed in 2025. These are the Kemetron Lagoon, Lions Park, West Beach, and the Alexander Street Ravine, along with the coal gasification site. And having spent much time in the town myself, it really is fantastic to see these sites cleaned up. It's a great legacy left for the town. Not only is it removing radioactive waste, putting that waste in places that meet modern standards, it leaves a much better environment for the town. So really proud of all the work that has been done by CNL in that area. Moving on to 2026, the major site restoration work is contained to the harbour, Highland Drive landfill and Highland Drive South Ravine, as well as the remediation of the remaining small-scale sites. To date, the team have remediated and placed over 2.2 million cubic metres, or over 4 million tonnes of low-level waste from both the Port Granby site and the town of Port Hope. For the town of Port Hope, over 1.3 million cubic metres of waste has been put into the long-term waste management facility. Although the major sites are nearing completion, there's still a substantial amount of work left to complete the Port Hope area project. The original scope considered that around 375 private properties or small-scale sites would be required to be remediated. With the characterisation of the town nearing completion, it's now becoming clear that the number of small-scale sites potentially requiring to be remediated has risen over to 1,200 with an additional 250 road allowances. The remediation of these small-scale sites continue to be a challenge. AECL and CNL are working diligently with regulators to address the needs and expectations of both the town and the residents, and to ensure that we can find a sort of common sense, risk-informed approach to the remaining remediation activities, which doesn't negatively impact the environment. We are very keen to see this project completed. So all in all, across all of our sites, we're seeing good progress with the decommissioning and remediation, leading to the reduction in the liabilities that we have to deal with. It's just really good work being done by CNL, the staff there, the contractors, the suppliers. Very good work. I've talked a lot about decommissioning and addressing legacy waste, and this is a huge part of what we do. Here at Chalk River, there has been good progress made on building B250. It's one of the site's earliest facilities, with the south tower now ready for demolition. The tritium facility has been removed, active ventilation systems have been removed, much asbestos has been removed, fume hoods have been removed, and good progress on the remediation of percolates that are throughout that building. All of this is to enable the safe demolition of the building and enable us to separate out waste that is radioactive and waste that's non-radioactive. The teams on site are diligently working away at the characterisation and selective decommissioning across several other legacy buildings in Chalk River. But dealing with the past is just one element of my team's mandate. Looking to the future, another key goal of ours is the revitalisation of the Chalk River campus. And the teams have done a huge amount of work over the last year, are excited about what's going to come. Last year, some of the projects include, replacing helium lines and heaters and laboratories to help support ongoing science and technology work, replacement of water service valves to improve the water distribution infrastructure, firewater pipe relining, which is extending the life of about 40% of the existing underground firewater lines, replacing electrical switchgear and transformers, We've also fabricated off-site a mobile unit switching station, which will support the site in case we have failures of the main substation on site, and also supporting the purchase of a dedicated vehicle to maintain site security. Each of these by themselves are big projects, and taken together, it represents a huge amount of positive change across the site. And lastly, I'd like to provide an update on the centerpiece of the Lab of the Future. This is a video that's going to run. It's going to run a little bit longer than I'll speak, so I'll take some pauses. This ANMRC Advanced Nuclear Materials Research Centre will be a 3-storey nuclear research facility. It includes 12 hot cells. There'll be 12,000 metres square of floor space and just under 3,000 metres squared of additional laboratory space. The facility will keep the labs at the forefront of modern nuclear research, supporting the existing fleet of power plants in Canada and helping to enable the expansion of nuclear energy in Canada, which, as we've heard earlier, is already underway. Having this state-of-the-art facility will help us to continue to attract and retain the world-class scientists and engineers that are really at the heart of everything we do on this site here. So looking at this year, we can see the south side of this building. We've seen framing, we've seen mass timber installation has been completed. The building envelope has been completed. Once we get through the time-lapse photos, you'll see on the right-hand side of these photos an amazing amount of progress on that building. The design of the hot cells, however, which are the heart of the facility, are currently undergoing what we call 75% design reviews. And we're aiming to have 90% of the design, so the design's at a stage that's close to completion, submitted in the second quarter of the next financial year. These hot cell designs are taking a little bit longer than expected, and they're really a current focus for us and will be a focus for us going forward. Very important to get the design right. But we can also see on the left-hand side as we go through this, you can see some of the foundations, some of the deep hole foundations for the hot cells that are forming as we go through the construction of this project. So we're still a few years away from the construction of this major project. It's a complicated project as well, but as you can see from the video, it is starting to take shape. So overall, some really good work taking place across the decommissioning, really dealing with liabilities across the site, and really excited about the future of the site. As many people, if you came on the site today, you would see it vastly different from what you saw a few years ago. So just trying to create and enable a good, successful future for CNL. So with that, thanks very much, and back to Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Alistair. And lastly, I'm going to bring you back up, Fred, to talk about the future. So Fred DeMarker, our CEO, is just going to have a couple remarks on what the outlook looks like for the next couple of years. Go ahead, Fred.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jeremy. And thank you for that, Alistair and Stephanie as well. I'd like to, as Jeremy alluded, I'd like to conclude today with a look into the future. As you've heard today, we have an incredible amount of work going on at our sites, and that's just some of the highlights. In the next couple of years, I'm looking forward to seeing the new management team in place at CNL and driving even more results and more innovation. Deeper collaboration and partnerships with Indigenous communities and Indigenous nations. Exploitation, if feasible, of our slowpoke modular reactor technology and of our nuclear battery technology. Advances in fusion and partnerships with G7 allies. Even more partnerships within Canada with provinces, companies, and academia. Our joint ventures delivering results and attracting investment. Cleanup of all major sites in Port Hope completed. The near-surface disposal facility constructed and receiving waste. And the Advanced Nuclear Materials Research Center in operation. And more broadly, I'm looking forward to a thriving nuclear sector in Canada, with AECL playing a leading role as more jurisdictions look to nuclear, whether it's large reactors, including our very own CANDU reactor, modular reactors, or other technologies to power their economies and drive productivity. I continue to be extremely proud of what we and CNL have accomplished here at the labs and at our environmental remediation sites across the country, and the positive impact we have on the health and prosperity of all Canadians. Thank you, and I'll hand it back to Jeremy for any questions.
Thank you very much, Fred. And that concludes our program for today, but we have some time for questions. As I had noted, if you'd like, in Teams, as you're watching here, there's a little window where you can submit questions. You can go ahead and do that if you like, and we'll be happy to answer them. I don't think we have any questions so far, so we must have been extremely clear and thorough and answered everything. So in the interest of giving folks a little bit of time before we close today, Fred, maybe I'll give you an impromptu question that I know you can handle, and that is, you talked about fusion. What's the timeline for fusion? I know we're talking about building large reactors, tomorrow, and small modular reactors soon, but we're also investing in fusion. What's the timeline look like for that, and how does that look in your mind? Sort of spell it out for us.
Well, that's actually not that easy a question, Jeremy. No, it's not an easy one. So, I mean, that's the $1 trillion question, isn't it? How close are we to fusion? Let me say this. We are not so close to fusion that we can afford to not build fission. In other words, fission reactors are needed today as a transition from fossil fuels, and they will be transitioning to fusion. So my own view is we need to continue to invest in building fission reactors, and that's a significant investment. And then and we need to continue to invest in fusion technology so that it will be available, and we're not constantly investing in fission reactors going forward. But I guess a more important question is what do we envision as our next steps with respect to fusion? So I talked a little bit about some of the things that we're doing today. We have the Fusion Fuel Cycle project going with Kyoto Fusion Engineering. We've set up the center for, we are working towards setting up a center for fusion energy. But what will come after that? Well, there are very few countries in this world that are able to do fusion all on their own. I can name only two if they are successful, and you can probably guess what those two are. It's the US and China. The rest of the world, in order for it to be able to deliver fusion, countries will have to go work together. And I don't mean companies, I mean countries. These are national scale efforts that will have to come together with countries working together. What's really positive here is that countries are recognizing this. Our very own Prime Minister, Mark Carney, a couple of months ago when he was in the UK, agreed with the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to work together, to have Canada and the UK work together to move forward with fusion. I see AECL as being very well positioned to help to deliver on that country-to-country collaboration. We won't do it alone, but we will be a leader in helping to deliver on that. So I've answered your question in a roundabout way, but really there is a long-term view. The fusion, in my mind, it will be past fission. So we need to invest in fission, but we also need to continue to advance with country-to-country collaborations to advance fusion. And I hope that gave us time to have some questions come in.
I'm hopeful, but I'm looking at a blank screen. So I think I think we may just close it now. It is currently just a little bit past 2 o'clock here in Chalk River. Seeing no other questions, this isn't your last opportunity to ask a question. However, you're more than welcome to contact us. If you go to our website, go to contact us. We're at aecl.ca. That's pretty easy to remember. Go there and you can find the contact information for us, or you can try communications@aecl.ca if you want to email us. And we'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have. We always love hearing from members of the public, and we're happy to answer anything you might be interested in. So without any further ado, I think I will say thank you, Jim Burpee. Thank you, Fred DeMarker, Stephanie LeMay, Alistair McDonald, for giving us a great overview of everything that's gone on here at AECL over the last year and what we can expect coming forward into the future. It's going to be an exciting time. So to everybody who joined us online, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here. Have a great rest of your day.